Hi, YouTube. This is the Ask Pamela Anything session. I used to call them the daily updates, and then I recognized that I could go and talk to all of you on my lovely Patreon channel and give you the opportunity to ask pretty much anything. I don't really care what it is. Open book over here. It's Saturday morning. I'm sitting out on my porch, and it's pretty quiet, but occasionally you'll hear a neighbor hacking away in the garage at something. For 2 hours, someone was running the pressure washer, things like that. If that happens, I'll go inside. But it seems to have calmed down for now. Saturday is apparently the work day where I live, at least out in the yard. So I'm going to read your first question. It was something that we all struggle with or have struggled with at one point in time, at some point in time or another, right? So the first question is from Kim. And it is, how can I best move forward in business, love, relationship, and life in general? I feel like I know what to do, but something is stopping me, or I feel like I am afraid of something. I feel stuck, she says. So about that, I want to give you a few different reasons for what causes feeling stuck. And I want to give you the ego version and the truth of it with what's actually going on, what your mind is going to tell you versus what's really going on. And I'd like to talk about some steps to get unstuck. And that's primarily relationships, but also career and spiritual practice as well. So one reason why most people feel stuck is that they have energetically, spiritually outgrown something, whether it be a career, a relationship, a spiritual practice, whatever it is. You've just outgrown it, and you're in that space where you feel stuck because it's no longer relevant and you're not letting yourself get unstuck. We'll cover that in a moment. Another thing that happens within that, in terms of why people get stuck and stay stuck, they realize they've outgrown the situation, but then another thing happens. You're attached to the stuck. So you're attached to the security that it provides, financially, physically, emotionally, whatever it is. I also call this just being too karmically comfortable. You're too attached in general to the karmic situation energetically, and you don't quite know what to do. So this is you don't see this in nature. You don't see a caterpillar going into the cocoon and then kind of being like, I don't like it in here. You know what I mean? They kind of realize that a shift is coming, and they're sitting with that change and growing deeply and shifting inside of that cocoon. They don't say, you know what? I think that it's kind of scary in the outside world. I'm just going to stay in here, despite all the obvious changes that my body and mind and energy are making, right? Caterpillars, when they're ready to break out, they break out and they become the butterfly and they fly into their new world. So it's kind of a ego thing that says, well, everything's just fine. I should just accept exactly where I am because it's just fine, right? Have you ever done that to yourselves? Okay, another reason why people get stuck is that they are uncomfortable with what I call the in-between space. Some people call it the void, but there's a space and time before change actually happens when you have put a mandate out to the universe. Alchemist, you've made a certain command or a call or an affirmation, and you are beginning to manifest things, but you don't see it yet. So the ego goes, none of that worked. You may as well just stay right where you are, right? Ego does that. You don't see anything changing. You're just fooling yourself. The mind tries to do these fun little things, and it just happens. So the in-between space, you outgrew the situation, but your life that you want to be new and different isn't quite here yet. And the job change isn't here yet, so you say, well, I'm just going to stay in this job. It just makes good enough money while your soul is quietly being stripped away. But you're just going to stay there because it's comfortable, right? You outgrew the situation, but you're just not seeing the effects yet. So then you go backwards and decide to stay right where you are. You stop all of your spiritual work. You stop feeling and healing and manifesting, and you go, well, nothing happened, so I'm just going to stay right here. Okay. And then the fourth reason why most people get and stay stuck is that they are triggered. And when you're triggered, you feel attacked. You get kind of like an animal in a corner. Speaking of attack, the birds, I think, are attacking each other on my ceiling. You can't make this up. In this six-dimensional world of manifestation, there are two birds on my ceiling. I don't think I could turn my camera around while I'm live, but they're not too happy with each other. Can you hear it? So basically you feel attacked. I have been feeling attacked lately, so the birds are just my reflection to that. So when a big change is about to happen and something occurs to reflect that change, which by the way recently happened to me, you kind of go, oh my God, oh no, I was doing just fine. Why am I being attacked? You get triggered and you shut down. Okay? That's just the truth of it. That's what ego does. It says you need to defend yourself. You are unsafe. Stay right where you are. I'm from the South, so this happens a lot when we get like hurricanes and tornadoes. Southern people, you know what I'm about to say. You know the phrase, hunker down. Just hunker down and get through, right? We take that very literally. The birds. The one that was attacking the other one just flew away, and then the one that was attacking it, like, also followed the one that flew away. Now they're just kind of sitting there, like, they came back, and now they're sitting there fluffing their wings at each other. Yeah. Anyway, that's really funny. Six-dimensional manifestation, people, happens. I can just think about something, and it shows up in front of my face. Do you guys go through that? When you're not stuck, the world will show you that you're not in so many symbols. If you're paying attention in so many ways, Spirit will show you that you're not stuck, but you have to be willing to pay attention and do something about it. So the truth of it, you're not stuck, you're scared, okay? That's what happens when you outgrow your situation. Another truth of it, you're not stuck, you're bored. That happens when you're attached to the stuck feeling. Another truth of the situation, you're not stuck, you're triggered and feeling unsafe, right? So you're being defensive, feeling attacked, and likely you're going to bolt and run away. So we're going to talk about that here in a moment. But first, let's talk about some of the ways to get unstuck. These birds, you can't make it up. One way to get unstuck is to be aware of those 4 reasons why you got stuck, which one you're in, which pattern you're in, and be prepared to do the work that it takes to become unstuck. Step number 1, be aware and understand what's really going on, not just whatever blockage your ego is creating for you to believe is true, okay? The second step, feel and heal. That means, with the exception, and I really iterate this very strongly, with the exception of emotional and physically unsafe circumstances, you need to be willing to accept your now, be present in your now, and feel what's going on, understand it, feel it, and heal it. Because until you learn to really be at peace with why certain patterns happen that cause stuckness in your life, you could likely get stuck in the I'm triggered, I need to bolt problem, and then that problem may follow you. Okay. The third thing you can do to stop being unstuck is to create something old or new. So perhaps it's something that you always wanted to do, but your ego said, I'm not good enough. I'm not ready yet. I don't have a degree. I don't have the Reiki certification. I'm not comfortable, which are just primarily ego excuses for something that you haven't felt or dealt with. However, when you begin to create something old that you've always wanted to create, or something new that you haven't and you just want to and need to, and you're feeling that motivation, that passion, that inspiration, the call, don't ignore the call. So that's step number 3. Create something new. Don't ignore the call. Okay. Step number 4 goes along with step number 3. Don't use being stuck as an excuse. This is something that we've all done. So what that looks like, people will say, well, I don't have enough money. It's not time. The kids aren't out of the house yet. My partner can't handle it. I don't have enough courage. I don't believe I'm good enough in the trade or the art. I'm not feeling motivation. That's another one. So don't use those excuses of lack. I call those lack excuses. So don't use any lack of anything as an excuse for staying right where you are. Step number 5, nourish and soothe yourself. Learn to do that, okay? And here's how you do it: by being loving, by being aware of negative, detrimental, shameful, debasing self-talk. So that's kind of the thing in your mind that said what I just said a few moments ago. I'm not good enough. I'm not ready. This will never work. This won't make money. I can't possibly support myself and my children on that. These are some of the things I've said to myself in the past. Okay. And the universe, if you want change, it will push that change right in your face until you do it. And then it starts to be uncomfortable to stay doing some of the things you were currently doing to remain stuck. So nourish and soothe yourself by being aware of the negative self-critical talk that goes on in the forefront and in the background of the mind, and replace that negative self-talk with nourishing, soothing talk. So one of the things that is one of my favorite mantras as a mom in this world, you notice that if you've ever watched a mom, like a really good mom, one of the first things and common things that she says to her children is the mantra, "It's okay." She doesn't say, "It's okay, don't feel that way." She doesn't say, "It's okay, it's all going to be better tomorrow." She just says, "It's okay." So when babies are crying and moms are holding them and they're patting them on the back and they're going, "It's okay, it's okay, it's okay." Okay? So some of you who are deep in your shadow work right now are going to say that's a bit of a bypass. That doesn't replace the need for healing and feeling and accepting where you are and working through the issues. But you can't work through the issues without nourishing yourself and being aware and soothing yourself so that you can even feel peaceful and safe enough to do your deeply embedded emotional work. You're going to have to start with, "It's going to be okay. It's okay." So nourish and soothe yourself. Another, some things that I like to do, I do a lot of breath exercises. I created a program called Kripa Yoga. Many people believe, where in the country that I'm from, that yoga is about asana and physical stuff. When I mean yoga, I mean Eastern yoga. So this is pratyahara, pranayama, deep mindfulness, deep understanding of awareness of the mind and the body, and particular kriyas and techniques that you use, both with the mind and the body, to formulate a spiritual practice to soothe yourself and make physical and emotional changes. So yoga, no matter what path you go on, take yoga with you. It's amazing. That's one way that you can nourish and soothe yourself and prepare for deep change and get unstuck. Replace negative criticism with loving self-talk. Now, no, that's not a bypass. It also has to be authentic, loving self-talk. If you don't believe it, you sure as hell are not going to receive it, okay? So believing it is receiving it. So it has to be something that's, remotely believable. Mantra, some also say that's a great distraction, but a distraction from what? An ego that isn't working. And when I tell my clients who say mantra doesn't work, I say, how long have you tried? And how are all of your other ego excuses working for you? So kind of the how's that working for you theory. If you haven't tried mantra and you're going to use your kind of an excuse to not try yoga, not try mantra, not try affirmations, but you're going to continue to be mean to yourself, the only thing I can say is, okay, how's that working for you? Please be willing to nourish and soothe yourself with a change of routine, new exercise, more sunlight in the morning, perhaps as the sun's coming up. Make yourself get up earlier. Sometimes self-love involves discipline in self-care, right? All of that stuff that most people know and a lot of people avoid. Step number 6 with how to get unstuck. Learn to communicate. Open up that throat energy. Talk about the issues. Don't be afraid to have uncomfortable conversations. It took me years in my life to actually have friends around me who can have uncomfortable conversations. And there are as many as I can count on this hand, right? But don't assume that you can't talk about the issues. Have those uncomfortable conversations. Don't be afraid to talk about how you feel with others, where your boundaries are, where they need to be, and what needs to happen for everyone's growth and safety. Not just yours, but everyone's. Okay, now, having said that, The step that involves the second step in that communicate step is don't make assumptions. Don't assume that what you need for boundaries and growth is what someone else is going to need. Also, don't assume that others aren't capable of growing with you. Why? Because it's just kind of not fair. It's an unfair expectation. Perhaps you still love someone in a relationship and you want change and they're not changing and you assume that they can't and you need it. You've outgrown certain things. Don't assume they can't. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to talk about it. Don't assume also that others may not be feeling the need to change in a way that could cause them to outgrow you. So some of you sit with me in private sessions often when it comes to relationship difficulties, and you get so shocked when I say, go talk to your partner that you've been being stuck with for the past, 10, 15, 20 years. And they do, and they talk about the problems, and the partner looks them straight in the eyes and goes, you know what? I get it. We should leave each other. And then you don't quite know how to handle that either. That might be another YouTube. But you know what? We can talk about that, because the next step in getting unstuck is be comfortable with yourself and with the silence and nothingness of what is happening in your now. AKA runners, don't run away. With the exception of emotional and physical safety being the concern, and I strongly iterate that, it's important to not run away so fast when you feel stuck. Otherwise, the karmic issue may just show right back up as an opportunity for expansion wherever you run. So for getting stuck out of your spiritual practice, there's a lot of things involving that, but generally speaking, don't make assumptions. First thing with getting stuck out of your spiritual practice, if something isn't working in your spiritual practice, don't make assumptions that it's not. Again, when you're in that void space and change, it can take weeks to months to years to be appropriately disciplined in meditation and in spiritual practices. Some things happen right away, and you go through periods of being stuck and then open again and then stuck and then open again. Has that happened for you guys? And then you say, oh no, I remember when my third eye was open and I could see things and hear things and have all these, in Eastern yoga, we call them siddhis. So siddhis, not like cities, but SIDD, HIS is, I believe, the way it's spelled. The siddhis are gifts that accompany awakening, but in Eastern yoga, we don't teach that they start first. That's in Western yoga, teaches that your third eye is supposed to be open. You're supposed to develop some level of hearing, clairaudience. A lot of you get really outlandish with your expectations of what a spiritual practice should be, in terms of some of you expect levitation, instant telepathy, and being able to astral project and bilocate and, go into the deep dreaming. That takes a practitioner years. That takes, a student years sometimes to accomplish. Some of you have this pop in your spiritual awakening. It happens like a Pandora's box. And then others of you have a pop and then it closes just as quickly. And then others of you, it takes regular daily spiritual practice. Okay, so just not having expectations and assumptions of what you think your spiritual practice should be is the biggest thing about being unstuck, about getting unstuck. Assuming that all of those siddhis are actual what's required to be unstuck might be a real big misperception for you. It's just everyone's different, okay? So some people have a lot of natural clairvoyance and clairaudience and hands-on healing techniques and things happen for them in that way, and some just don't. Some have more of an internal knowingness that I call precognition. It is the most common spiritual ability on the planet, and it seems to happen first before any of the other clairs develop. So when you kind of don't really understand what that is, it can be really frustrating, okay? So I teach about how to open up all those abilities and how to be aware of what your unique ability is on my Patreon channel, which I'll link below, because there's just a lot of lack of awareness based upon deep misperceptions, particularly, in the Western cultures of spiritual practitionership and being a student and a teacher. I see a lot of that in comparison to, Eastern traditions and teachings. You don't find that expectation at all. People go, what? clairvoyance. No, I'm just trying to meditate properly so that I can have better health and be aware of my breath and be happy in my life. So there's just differences in things. So that's one thing. Another thing, if you're doing a practice in your spiritual practice and it isn't working for you, don't be afraid to make that shift. And the other thing is consistency and commitment. So again, some people take days, some people take months, some people take weeks, some people take years to really open up their inner well-being. And it starts with quieting your thoughts. And the moment you can really be aware of your breath and quieting your thoughts, I'll tell you, a lot happens. So going back to using the How to Get Unstuck steps that I put forth in this video, it applies in your spiritual practice too. So being aware and understanding what's really going on, that perhaps your gifts aren't clairvoyance and talking to angels, perhaps it's something else. Being able to feel and heal. How that works is, in order to open up to abilities, a lot of us have to be aware of where our minds are blocking them by blocking our emotional processes for healing, okay? Creating something old or new, spiritual practice, apply to spiritual practice. Don't use being stuck as an excuse. A lot of you who do have abilities use that when your spiritual practice needs to change and you're in that place where you want to, as Lilith calls it, go big or go home. That's one of my dominant guides. When I'm getting ready to make something, create something new, she goes, go big or go home. You gonna do it? I'm like, yep. But it takes a lot to get there sometimes, right? So don't use being stuck as an excuse. I hear people who need change in their spiritual practice saying, well, I don't have the appropriate webcam. I don't have privacy in my home. I don't have this. I don't have that. So kind of get out of the don't have the lack mentality and focus on where you do and start anyway. Isn't that fun? So that would be a really good thing to consider. And what else? Nourish and soothe yourself with mantra, breath, exercises, and loving self-talk. That applies in your spiritual practice as well. Communicate, except this time apply that to communicating and using self-inquiry. If you want to get to know your guides, why aren't you talking to them and asking them questions? Not just, hey guide, I know you're there. Would you like to tell me your name? I mean, deep questions, very deep questions, very specific questions. I have a class called Soul Essence Communication, Talking to the Higher Self, and Soul Essence Communication, Talking to the Higher Self of Others. I'll link it below. And it talks about, it literally lists around 80 inquiries that I use to talk to my guides that I've been taught by a lot of the masters that work with me in spirit and in form. And a lot of them have told me I'm not asking the right questions. So when I started asking the right questions, that really is the only reason why I have all these gifts. And yes, they opened up at a young age, but I really would have just been seeing all these beings and not quite knowing what to do with them and how to work with them if I weren't asking the right questions, okay? So being comfortable with yourself and being in the nothingness of your now, that works in opening up your spiritual practice as well. Why? You have to learn to meditate. I know. But just a few minutes a day. Yogananda says, if you can sit properly in asana and learn to meditate properly for just 30 seconds, that it can add up to 30 years to your life. How important is that, right? It's just so incredible. And I'm so happy about it. So it's just something, learning to meditate quickly and properly. I created a practice called Kripa Yoga, and I offer source stones. So what that is the sound of your own self. When I get around people, since I was a little girl, I would hear what I call a soul essence song. I would hear these tones that relate to you. And when you learn that practice of chanting or singing or saying them back as an affirmation to yourself for 20 minutes and then sit in the silence that happens therefrom, a lot of powerful things can be stirred up from within you. But you have to be really uncomfortable with absolutely nothing happen first. So what that means is when you go to meditate, don't expect angels to jump out of the clouds and, shove some rainbows, into your essence and say, hey, you are now spiritual. Okay. Not everybody works that way. It's going to take some time. And sometimes you go into that nothingness within yourself so deep. And then with the something happens, you go, oh my God. So my goodness, I've been at this for 24 minutes. We might have to take the rest of your questions on another day, and I'll answer them in brief on the Patreon channel. of the post of the Ask Pamela Anything post. All right. I'll see you guys soon. I'll link up all those links below. Thanks for coming and sharing my Saturday with me. I've been trying to do these every day, but I got a little bit stuck, got a little bit triggered recently, by being told who and what I can and cannot channel. I know, right? And I'm just in that process of like, what do I do about it? So I didn't talk for a few days because I was just going, oh my God. So I'm back, and I'll see you soon.